10 days before the United States turned 50, Thomas Jefferson sent one final letter. It was not addressed to a president. It was not a private farewell to his family. It went to Roger Chew Weightman, the mayor of Washington, after Jefferson had been invited to attend the nation's anniversary celebration on July 4th, 1826. Jefferson was 83 years old. He was too ill to travel. So from Monticello, on June 24th, he answered in writing. The letter looked backward to 1776. It looked forward to a world Jefferson would not live to see. And it described the Declaration of Independence as a signal, one that might continue traveling long after its authors were gone. 10 days later, on the 50th anniversary of American independence, Jefferson died. Several hours after that, John Adams died too. The two men had helped create the nation, opposed each other, reconciled through letters, and then left the historical record on the same day. But before the celebrations began, Jefferson had already sent his final message. The invitation reached Monticello during a year of national remembrance. Across the United States, communities were preparing to mark half a century since the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. Washington planned a major celebration. Roger Weightman wrote to Jefferson on behalf of the city and invited him to attend as one of the surviving signers of the document. The invitation carried more than ceremony. Jefferson was widely identified as the Declaration's principal author. His presence would connect the anniversary crowd directly to the moment in 1776, when 13 colonies announced that they regarded themselves as free and independent states. But the journey from Virginia to Washington was beyond him. Jefferson's health had deteriorated. He had spent years dealing with serious illness, and by June 1826, his strength was failing rapidly. Travel by carriage over 19th century roads would have been difficult even for a healthy older man. For Jefferson, it was impossible. He could have sent a brief refusal. Instead, he used the invitation to write one last reflection on the meaning of the Declaration. The letter began politely. He thanked Weightman and the citizens of Washington for the honor. He explained that his physical condition prevented him from joining them. Then the message moved beyond attendance. Jefferson described the Declaration as an instrument connected not only to the fate of the United States, but to the fate of the world. He believed the document's principles would continue spreading. Not everywhere at once, not without resistance, but, in his view, eventually. One phrase compared the Declaration to the signal of arousing men to burst the chains. Another declared that all eyes are opened or opening to the rights of man. Those words make the letter sound triumphant, but they also expose one of the central contradictions surrounding its author. Jefferson wrote that all men were created equal while living in a society sustained by slavery. He enslaved people throughout his life. The freedom he described as universal was not delivered universally by the country he helped establish. Many people were excluded by law, race, sex, status, and power. The Declaration announced an ideal larger than the political reality of 1776. Jefferson's final letter continued speaking in the language of that ideal. For a modern reader, the message cannot be separated from the distance between the promise and the country that made it. That distance is part of why the words survived. The Declaration became something Americans repeatedly used against American injustice. Abolitionists appealed to its language. Women's rights advocates adapted it. Civil rights leaders demanded, that the nation apply its stated principles more fully. The document did not settle the meaning of equality. It created language through which later generations could argue about it. Jefferson's last letter predicted that the argument would continue. He wrote from a private room at Monticello, but the receiver was public. Weightman was not simply reading for himself. The letter had been written in response to a civic invitation and was meant to be shared. Its message belonged to the anniversary. The timing gave it additional weight. June 24th was only 10 days before July 4th. Jefferson's illness was becoming more severe. The letter would later be identified by the Library of Congress as the last one he wrote. That does not mean Jefferson knew every word would be examined as a final statement. There is no need to imagine him deliberately composing his own ending. The surviving paper is powerful enough without reconstruction. An invitation arrived. An old man could not attend. He answered. The answer became his final letter. At Monticello, Jefferson's condition worsened. Accounts of his final days differ in some details, especially when they try to assign symbolic last words. Later stories emphasized questions such as whether it was already the 4th of July. Monticello's historical research treats those famous versions cautiously. The last words attributed to a dying public figure often become polished by memory. The letter does not depend on that uncertainty. Its date is clear. Its recipient is clear. Its handwriting and text remain part of the archive. While Jefferson lay ill in Virginia, John Adams was also approaching death in Massachusetts. The two men had once been close collaborators. Adams had supported Jefferson's role in drafting the Declaration. They served together in diplomacy. Then the politics of the new republic drove them apart. The presidential election of 1800 turned them into bitter opponents. For years, they did not communicate. In 1812, with help from their mutual friend Benjamin Rush, the correspondence resumed. The letters that followed became one of the great political conversations of the early United States. They discussed revolution, government, religion, aging, memory, and the history they had lived through together. By 1826, the relationship had survived both rivalry and silence. Neither man knew how closely their final hours would align. On July 4th, celebrations began across the country. The date marked 50 years since the Declaration's adoption. At Monticello, Jefferson died shortly after noon. He was 83. In Quincy, Massachusetts, Adams died several hours later at the age of 90. News did not travel fast enough for Adams to know that Jefferson was already dead. Family tradition later preserved words attributed to Adams. Thomas Jefferson survives. Whether spoken exactly that way or remembered afterward, the statement carried an irony no one in the room could yet understand. Jefferson did not survive the day, but his letter did. The coincidence of the two deaths immediately became part of the national story. Two former presidents, two signers, two former rivals. Dead on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration, public mourning and anniversary celebration became inseparable. Churches, newspapers, civic leaders, and speakers interpreted the timing as meaningful. The country treated their deaths not as ordinary private losses, but as an ending to the founding generation. Yet the scene was not truly an ending. The country was still expanding. Slavery remained legal and deeply embedded. Conflict over federal power, territory, citizenship, and human rights continued. The ideals praised in Jefferson's letter had not reached the condition he imagined. The message entered history as both confidence and challenge. It said that the principles of self-government would move outward. The record of the next 2 centuries shows progress, resistance, violence, exclusion, reform, and repeated arguments over who possessed the rights the Declaration named. In 2026, the United States reached its 250th anniversary. That modern celebration echoes the event Jefferson had been invited to attend 200 years earlier. In 1826, Americans looked back across 50 years and asked what independence had produced. In 2026, the distance is 5 times longer. The same document remains at the center. So does the same unresolved question. Who is included in its promise? The original letter to Roger Weightman survives through the National Historical Record. The Library of Congress preserves and displays the text. Monticello includes it in its interpretation of Jefferson's final years and the continuing legacy of the Declaration. It exists not as a reconstructed speech, but as a dated document sent from one identifiable person to another. That makes it ideal for this archive. There is a sender, there is a receiver, there is a message, then there is silence. Thomas Jefferson could not travel to Washington for America's 50th anniversary. He sent a letter instead. In it, he described the Declaration as a signal that would continue awakening people to their rights. 10 days later, the celebrations began. Cannons sounded. Crowds gathered. The author of the Declaration died at Monticello, and the final letter continued its journey without him.